Hey, my name is Ken Rossignol with the Chesapeake Today. I'm here this morning with Tom McKay, who is running again for Commissioner President of St. Mary's County in the Republican primary on June 19th. Tom, how have the events of the last few days affect the people in Hollywood and around the county?
You know, it's been a very difficult couple of days. Yesterday was a day of, mourning and assessment, and today I think is a day of pulling our bootstraps up and deciding how we go forward. I appreciate you inviting me here this morning for this interview, and I hesitated to do it at all because I think that we as candidates and elected officials, we need to step back and allow the mourning and allow the shock to be absorbed by those people that are most affected by it. However, with that said, we are in the middle of an election, and I can't change the election schedule. It's going to happen on Tuesday, and I think it's important because of that I come here to talk about what's important in this election, not what happened over the weekend.
To be so specific, would you describe, you were at Friday night at the Fireman's Carnival in Hollywood, so the viewer and reader may not know. Will you tell them what you saw and what it was like there that night?
Well, first of all, yeah, the Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department Carnival is a staple in our community. And it always has been. I've been going there my entire life, from a young child, and even as late as Friday evening. And my wife and I were there, and we were having a great time, and everybody was having a great time. It was a great event, and it will always be a great event, I think, no matter what.
Well, a murder took place.
Yeah.
And the sheriff has already identified the murderer and the victim as coming from youth gangs in Lexington Park. So they knew immediately who they were.
Yeah.
How does that affect the peace and quiet and tranquility? The carnival's been canceled for last night and today.
Yeah, I mean, I think my wife and I left around just shortly after 9 on Friday evening, and my son was still there until about 10, and he left about 10, and I talked to him. And I mean, there were certainly groups of teenagers that we've always had groups of teenagers congregate at carnivals and other places, but it's summertime and you're in sweats and hoodies and masks, and that creates an atmosphere of concern, probably. Certainly for me it did, and I mean, and I'm not going to judge. I assume that the law enforcement that was there recognized the challenge that was probably ahead of them, and I assume that they did what they thought was the best they could do. You're right. A tragedy did take place, and I can't change that, and no one can change that. All we can do is go forward. And
well,
I think that's
going
important.
forward, the chief job of the county commissioners is basically to fund the sheriff's department. What do you think of the funding they've had over the past 4 years? And going forward, do they need more money? Do they need a $26 million sheriff's palace in Leonardtown?
Well, the answer to that question is no. I don't think they do. I think funding is when we provide funding as a board of county commissioners to any agency, be it law enforcement, be it education, parks and rec, we have to not fund problems. We have to fund results. I think that is the most important takeaway, not just from Friday night, but from everything we do as a community and as a county. And this is why I'm running for office. I'm not doing this interview because of Friday evening. I'm doing this interview because I'm running a campaign against an opponent that I think is a great guy, but I think that we have failed in that test of funding for results. we're just funding problems, and we keep funding problems.
Well,
we have to fund results.
One of the results we've had in the last 4 years is we have a $26 million sheriff's palace on the books. We're going forward with no public input. We have a pot factory in Able that got there with no public input. You've campaigned in this campaign saying that you'll bring the public input back to the firehouses.
Well, that's exactly correct. But and that's already been stated, and that is a fact. But let me just go back a little bit, if I can, here, Ken, to your discussion, your question just previously that I didn't complete the answer to, and that you brought up Lexington Park, and you brought up the tragedies. The tragedies that happened Friday evening aren't the first tragedies we've had from this type of activity in our community. This has been going on for a couple of years, and that's why I've talked about, and I presented almost 3 months ago, the Restore Lexington Park plan. And I think that plan is so important for this community, and I hope to get the opportunity to implement that plan. It's a hyper-local government plan to address, similar to the way we do Leonardtown, take a municipal type of government, a government that looks like a municipal government, put it in place on the ground, and try to bring law enforcement, education, recreation, all of our public services together on the ground to address all of our social economic issues, and as well as cleaning up the community. And I also relate that to my other commitment, which is a BRAC-ready community. It's all tied together, and I think it's a bigger picture, and that's what I would like to say to the citizens as they go to the polls on Tuesday. Do we just continue what we're doing, or do we look for a change, and specifically what's that change going to look like? And for me, that change is change the way we approach the Lexington Park situation by putting a hyper-local government on the ground. Change our commitment to being a BRAC-ready community all the time, and that means that we strive for the best public facilities, the best education facilities, the best law enforcement facilities, the safest communities, the best roads we can. We leverage state funds and federal funds because we're always talking about the importance of Pax River, not only to the federal government, not only to the state of Maryland, but to St. Mary's County. It is the 13th largest employer in the state of Maryland. We should be talking about Pax River to our government in Annapolis every day. They should understand the importance of it, because they should not be dealing with road construction at Route 5, which is taking 2 years, 3 years to get done.
5 years.
5 years. These are things that are important, and if you keep talking about the importance of Pax River, you keep being a BRAC-ready community, then it's absolutely a community commitment to build roads, have great schools, and have safe communities. Well, those are important things.
You're right. The importance of Pax River. 1988, they closed the bridge over to Solomon's. Imagine it happening again now.
Absolutely. We cannot afford, not only in St. Mary's County, but the state of Maryland cannot afford this to happen. And we have to have a government that is making sure that all of this is on the table all the time. And we did this before. My board, and I served with a great board of commissioners. We were a BRAC-ready board. We were focused on it. We were also focused on public safety. As I reflect back and I think about what I would be doing today, and I'm not criticizing my opponent today. Believe me, I hope he's doing the things that I think should be done, and maybe they are. I want the current Board of County Commissioners to be part of the solution to not only what happened Friday night, but the bigger picture of what some of the things that are happening in our community in terms of public safety. But what I reflect back, and on a Friday evening in 2003, we had another tragedy in this community, a huge tragedy. It was Hurricane Isabel. And you
brought out the department heads, the county attorney, the county administrator, and went door to door in an area where the county inspectors were throwing up condemn signs and then doing high fives at each other. When you learned that, you took everybody back out to the same neighborhood and said, we're not here to condemn your property, we're here to help you rebuild. and you extended time frames on getting building permits and everything else, there's people still suffering from that damage here, have not been able to afford to rebuild yet. But you turned government around from doing high fives over condemned stickers to actually pitching in and helping people.
So the most important thing after a tragedy, any tragedy, is to put the community, help the community get back on its feet as quickly as possible. That's what we did then. If you may recall, that happened on a Friday night. Sunday morning, and this is where we are today, Sunday morning. On Sunday morning, I called a commissioner board, emergency meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We did it right down here in this nearby community here. And you were there, I recall, covering it as one of the media sources. We brought together the Board of County Commissioners for an emergency meeting, again, to not go back and reflect on what we may have did right or wrong, but to make sure that the community knew, the commissioners were committed to putting this thing back together as quickly as possible. And I hope that as the fire department, for instance, in Hollywood is trying to determine, what's their best path forward next weekend with the carnival, I hope that the commissioners of St. Mary's County, my opponent, is assuring them that county commissioners are with them to stand this community back up. I mean, I would be, whatever the fire department decides, I'd back them 100%. If they don't want to open the carnival back up, I understand that, and I would understand it. However, I think that the first thing they need to know is that the St. Mary's County Commissioners, through their funding of agencies like the Sheriff's Department and Emergency Services, is standing ready to make sure they have whatever they need to open that carnival back up and bring this community back together.
Going forward, what do you think the county should be doing to assure the safety and operation of the St. Mary's County Fair in September?
Again, I think the same exact thing that I would be doing right now with the Hollywood Fire Department is making sure that our agencies that we fund are participating to the highest level necessary to assure the public safety. And if they're not, as I said before, then the St. Mary's County Commissioners need to be dedicated to moving resources to the agencies or areas or security that is necessary to make sure the fair, the carnivals, and all of our public activities. I mean, this community needs public activities. We need fairs. We need carnivals. People say all the time there's nothing for the kids to do. Well, we have to make sure those environments are safe, and that's the important part about law enforcement.
We have to make sure that our public officials don't give in to the thugs and the criminals.
You can't let them control, and that's why I am so committed. I'm so committed, and I hope that my opponent, again, I'm not here to criticize him. I'm just here to say, going forward, there's an election on Tuesday, and I challenge the citizens to think about how officials, specifically my opponent, provided the type of leadership over the last 8 years that has kept our community as safe as it could be, and I think going forward we have to make sure, once again, we have to make sure that we're not just giving the Sheriff's Department a 43% increase in funding because there are problems. We have to make sure that we're giving an agency that will solve the problems, the funding and resources. And I think the Sheriff's Department can do it. I have a lot of faith in the men and women in our law enforcement.
Well, the sheriff calls all hands on deck for Black Friday, and the state police, and they come out there and they swarm the shopping areas. That seems to be very effective. They could be doing the same thing for the carnival next weekend.
Exactly, and this is where the county commissioners right now today, and hopefully they are, could lead this effort. This is exactly what they should be doing today, and hopefully they're doing it. But I haven't heard that they are. I haven't seen any evidence that they are yet. But I know that I'm just saying that if it was my responsibility, this is what we did 19 years ago, and it was a great and I thought it showed the community that the county commissioners were ready to stand with the community. And I think that's one of the important things right now today, is to show that the county commissioners are ready to get, we can't let, again, the fire department, Hollywood Fire Department has a tough decision. They have to make whatever decision they have to make, and I applaud them whichever way they go for their efforts and their gallant service to this community, because they are great men and women, and it's not their fault. But I want to make sure, you know, when a sheriff's department has a $59 million annual budget, $59 million, and from what I understand, they allow 2 deputies to serve for the carnival. I don't know, you know, maybe that's sufficient, but it appears on Friday night maybe it wasn't sufficient. And so it doesn't sound sufficient to me.
To my knowledge, it's the first murder in the history of the Firemen's Carnivals in this county. First time, ever.
I mean, we've had some tragedies at carnivals, you know, but as far as a shooting like that, I don't recall one either. Again, my bigger concern is this overall overreaching problem of public safety. And I think a lot of it, again, I think for the voters, for the citizens of St. Mary's County, we're the ones who are going to have to solve this problem. And the way we're going to solve it is by putting people in place who have the experience, who've done these tasks before and have demonstrated results. And I think the citizens of St. Mary's County, when you go to the voting polls on Tuesday, you need to look at what are the results. What results are you getting for your taxpayer money from the current elected officials, or specifically the current president of the Board of County Commissioners? Again, he's a great guy. I'm just telling you that in my mind, we're not spending money on results. We're spending money because we have the money in St. Mary's County. And I heard a commissioner say once, just recently, just within the last 30 days, well, we have plenty of tax money coming into St. Mary's County. We should build the YMCA. We should spend the money because we have plenty of money. If we have plenty of money, let's put that money where it's needed to provide public safety, education, and the things that this community needs. And let's make sure that we're doing it, we're getting the results. I mean, when we're having problems with public safety in Lexington Park, what's the plan to fix the problem and fund the solution? Don't fund the problem.
Well, the current board seems to have been ignoring Lexington Park.
Exactly.
You know, for the last 8 years,
they put a press release out on the incident Friday evening, but there was no press release that I can remember, or I went back to try to find, when a young teenager was killed on the basketball court at Chancellor's Run Park. It appears that we've minimized the problem in Lexington Park, and when we minimize the problem,
we had the murder on Peg Road in January. They were shooting at each other, gangs of thugs shooting at each other at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Peg Road near Westbury, and one was murdered there. They made several arrests, but this is 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Let me tell you a quick story.
And there was no press release on that from the county commissioners.
I mean, so there appeared
a lot of people saw that. There were a lot of people in the neighborhood and in traffic and everything else. A lot of people were jeopardized by that.
Absolutely.
I'm glad they made a couple of arrests, but at the same time, Randy Guy didn't send out a press release.
Well,
but he did Friday.
And credit to the sheriffs and the sheriff's department, those men and women. They are making a lot of arrests in these cases, and that's great. Now, how do we rid the community of the problem? That's the issue. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story. Back in 2004, 2005, there was reports that there was a sect of the MS-13 gang operating in a Mexican restaurant, out of a Mexican restaurant near Lexington Park. So I had our emergency director at the time do a report to the county commissioners. The gentleman who was our emergency director was a fellow by the name of Tim Cameron, our current sheriff. And after the report was out, I went to our current sheriff of the time, the sheriff who was in office at the time, and I said, we need to eliminate the MS-13 gang from this community. And I publicly stated that if we couldn't accomplish it through our current sheriff's department, that the Board of County Commissioners would create a county police agency for that task. A fellow by the name of Frank Raley, J. Frank Raley, called me up. He was still alive at the time, and he says, wow, he says, nobody has ever, except for himself, who recommended that that might be an option back 40, 50 years ago when there were some other issues. He said, no one has ever done that. And you know what happened? The MS-13 gang was removed from St. Mary's County. They found refuge in Calvert County because our sheriff's department did put the pressure on them. Our sheriff's department did respond to the challenge because, again, and not that the people back then are better than the people today. It's just a matter of determination, focus, and making sure that everybody understands that we're funding the solution. We're not going to fund the problem, we're funding the solution. If that problem persists, it's not going to continue to be funded.